Okay, it looks like we're live. Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on existential delight. This is a live stream. This is kind of two birds with one stone. I'm testing out live streaming for really the first time seriously testing it out. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about my new logo. So first of all, hi, welcome. My name is Dylan Goos, and I'm glad you can be here. And I recently got a new logo, which I really like, and I thought I would talk a little bit about the symbolism that is actually inside of the logo and what it means, and why I chose to use the symbols that I did. And I'm gonna reference a few things, even some Bible verses, where I'm going to talk about the eye and the symbolism of the eye in this logo, and also the position of the eye in the logo. And I'm going to contrast it to my old logo. So just to kick things off right from the get-go, let's have a look. Okay, let's put that there. So I want to start off just by showing you my old logo, and then sort of letting you see the big contrast between the two. So right now what you're seeing on the screen is my new logo. And if I remove this, let's see, this is the old one. So it's pretty basic. Probably one of the biggest differences between this logo and the one I currently have is that this logo I designed on just a free online logo creation system, like free software basically. And I don't think it's that bad, but it is, it's free logo software. Then the new one, I actually got a professional designer to do it. Like, I commissioned someone to make it for me. And so I personally just don't think you can really compare the two logos. This one is just so much better. And so you'll see that the one commonality between both logos is the eye. And I was pretty adamant about wanting the eye to come in, but the positioning of the eye is different in the new logo, which is pretty key, as we'll soon discuss. Okay, so I'll take it sort of one step at a time, just looking at this logo. And the first thing that you'll notice compared to the old logo is that this logo actually has the name, the wording existential delight in it, which is it's great, because I didn't actually think that the designer would be able to get the words existential delight into the logo, because the word existential is so clunky. A lot of people struggle even just to say it. I struggled to say it the first time I saw it written down on paper. But I think he did a great job. I mean, I think it looks really good. So just to start things off, I'll just go into a little bit of the backstory as to the name of the channel. It's sad to note that it seems that, and I could just be completely in a bubble, and I could just be completely reading into it more than I should be, but it does seem prevalent among the humor that I share with my millennial counterparts and millennials in general. There does seem to be a sort of undergirding of nihilism. There seems to be an emphasis on the fact that life is meaningless. You see a lot of memes revolving around this idea, a lot of memes about killing oneself, and just the general lack of metaphysical structure in the average person's life. That seems to be quite prevalent. Again, I could just be reading into it, but at least in my experience, that seems to be the case. There does seem to be a sort of meaningless crisis going on. And that leads to an existential crisis. At least it did for me. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that I was experiencing it when I was in it. But the lack of meaning in my life really led me to a point where I didn't know why I was here, didn't think there was any meaning to life. The meaning to life was the meaning that I gave it, was sort of how I coped. But at some point, things changed for me, and I began to see the world in a very different light, and the word light is quite key there. And so with this channel, I decided I wanted to shift things a little bit. Not that I was making nihilistic content, but I wanted to try and make the type of content that make people feel good about being alive. Content that actually celebrates the fact that we exist and the sheer wonderful marvel that we in fact do exist. And I wanted to emphasize the fact that existence itself is a delight. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that suffering isn't there. Of course, there's lots of suffering, there's lots of horror in the world. But it's better to be here than it would be if nothing existed. And I firmly believe that. And so the main goal of the channel is to be the opposite of an existential crisis. And I try and keep that in mind whenever I'm writing a script or working on a video. And I'll actually explain that to anybody that I invite onto the channel. I want someone to finish watching something I've created and actually feel better about their life. And not in a kind of superficial way either, right? I want them to feel that there are significant reasons to be grateful that you are in fact here. So that's the name, Existential Delight. And there's more I could say on it, but for now, yeah, I'm really glad that the designer managed to get Existential Delight into the logo itself. Okay, so now I want to contrast again to the old logo, and you'll see that none of that is really there, it's just the eye. Now, when I initially put this logo together, I was much more of a new ager. I was very perennialistic. There is no objective truth. Everybody's individual truth is the truth. We are all actually at the deepest level, one being experiencing itself. I had a very Advaita Vedanta approach to reality. And yeah, I could go into that, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to. But basically, the eye in this logo is much more of a kind of third eye, if I could put it that way. It's meant to be a sort of mystical third eye. Open your inner eye and see the truth. Although that perennialistic sort of third eye approach, that sort of pineal gland third eye psychedelic approach I don't agree with it anymore. But that was what I was going for with this design. And so this brings me to the first point of the new logo, is that the eye is still there, except it's no longer the main, it's not really the point. I mean, this logo, it's basically just the eye. That is the logo. However, in the new logo, notice the positioning of the eye. It's down below between two books, and I'll explain that in a moment. And the eye is actually now underneath, and the idea is that the eye now looks up to the cross, which is symbolic of my own personal journey from the worship of sort of the individual self, even though perhaps someone who is immersed in that psychedelic worldview wouldn't consider themselves as somebody who worships the individual self. They'd probably tell you that they're always trying to eliminate the ego, but hence I digress. I no longer see the eye as the center, but the eye is the tool which I can now use to look up to the ultimate truth. Now, this ties into the wording, which you'll see just underneath Existential Delight. There's a Latin phrase. Latin is epic, I maintain. And I really wanted to have Latin in the logo for a variety of reasons. And in this logo, it says, Vincit omnia veritas, which just means truth conquers all. Truth conquers all, which I think is epic. And that Latin ties the whole image together, because notice how it's also above the eye, and it's symbolic, and this is sort of the secret meaning. The fact that the eye has been moved down below and the cross has been elevated up is a direct symbolic representation of my own personal worldview change from that New Ager point of view to Christianity. Now, I wanted to bring in a Bible verse here regarding the eye, because a lot of people, I think the eye, just in general, as a symbol, has a pretty bad rep. A lot of people see the eye, and some people think Illuminati, Other people think it's just automatically associated with evil, which is sad because it shouldn't be. I do think people use it that way, of course, but the way I'm using it here really is as the eye looking up to the cross. Now, in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 22 to 23, Jesus Christ actually says something pretty interesting about the eye. And I'll read you the verse, and then I'll read you a commentary on it. So the verse is just, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness?" So, just immediately off the bat, my instant impression is that the way we use the eye, the way we orient ourselves, has a massive impact on our experience of life, whether it's going to take us closer to goodness, truth, happiness, the light, or the very opposite. Now, I want to read you a commentary by St. John Chrysostom. He's a pretty important early church father. Here's an image of him so you can see what I mean. And he points out and he writes, and he's referencing this biblical verse, which is, "The eye he speaks of is not the external, but the internal eye. The light is the understanding, through which the soul sees God. He whose heart is turned to God has an eye full of light. That is, his understanding is pure and not distorted by the influence of worldly lusts." We can very often turn God, we can create an idol of God in our own minds that doesn't match what God really is, and then we end up worshipping the idol. And the idol usually comprises of all the things we want God to be, but it doesn't include all the things we don't want him to be. So we have this sort of darkened image and idolization of God that we worship. And the God we're actually worshipping isn't the God that's going to take us to where we want to be, which is pure love, pure happiness, and pure life. And so it's almost like your vision is obfuscated. You don't see as clearly. And you don't have your eye metaphorically, you don't have your eye sort of on the prize, if I can say that. So then he says, "The darkness in us is our bodily senses, which always desire the things that pertain to darkness. Whoso then has a pure eye, that is, a spiritual understanding, preserves his body in light, that is, without sin. For though the flesh desires evil, yet by the might of divine fear the soul resists it. But whoever has an eye, that is, an understanding, either darkened by the influence of the malignant passions, or fouled by evil lusts, possesses his body in darkness. He does not resist the flesh when it lusts after evil things." Right? Some guy gets this urge, this intense urge to, maybe he feels aroused, and then he immediately feels he needs to satisfy and satiate that craving, that sort of lust he feels. And then he rushes and watches, pornography or something. And it sort of temporarily satisfies him. But he's taken his eye off of the goal, right? He has expressed his lust and suppressed his yearning for a higher mode of being, a higher way of living, which is to be in control of the carnal passions. I use pornography as an example, but it could be the same with gluttony, right? I'm sitting here and I sometimes struggle with this. I'm sitting here and I want to go and eat something, and I'm not even hungry. I just want to go and eat something because I'm kind of bored, or there's something that tastes good in the fridge, and immediately there's a sort of internal conflict between my higher faculties, my reason and my will tell me I shouldn't, and my intellect advises me against it. but then your carnality fights against you. And you have to keep the truth in mind in those moments. You have to remember what you're fighting for, to speak in rather cliched terms. Okay, then he says, and I'll just repeat that last line. Let's see. He does not resist the flesh when it lusts after evil things, because he has no hope in heaven, the hope of which alone gives us the strength to resist desire. Okay, so I hope just by reading you that, I've hopefully shown you that just the eye itself as a symbol shouldn't be considered an inherently evil thing. I really don't intend it that way in the logo at all. It's about what you focus on with your eye, both metaphorically and also physically. I mean, what you do with your actual eyes is also very important, right? What you choose to look at, what you choose to expose yourself to also has a lot of weight. Okay, so let's just take St. John over there away. Okay, so we've looked at the logo, the text. We had a look at the Latin phrase, vincit omnia veritas, truth conquers all. We had a look at the eye, which looks up to the cross, and the cross is obviously, the cross is such an interesting thing. At its center, you have a contradiction. You have a death which leads to life, right? Christ's death provides us with life. So at the center, you have a contradiction, but from that center, the cross can expand outward in every direction and envelop the whole world. I'm paraphrasing G.K. Chesterton. It's quite opposite to the circle, which is used in a lot of different ways, but I would say primarily in Eastern thought, this eternality of the circle. So you're always sort of stuck in on yourself, right? But with the cross, the contradiction allows it to spread out and encompass everything. So it never trips on itself. It's a very interesting. If you just look at it symbolically, it's a very interesting idea. Also, I mean, the cross is also a torture device, right? And this is something that atheists will sometimes mock. I used to mock it when I was an atheist. I wouldn't wear a electric chair around my neck. Why would you wear a cross around your neck? And you also have to understand the historical context, because in Roman times, the cross was really in the ancient world, the cross was the ultimate, it was the worst way to die. I mean, it was the most humiliating, the most shameful, suspended in midair, beaten, bloody, dying a very painful death. People feared the cross. The sign of the cross instilled fear in people. So to see a cross was, it wasn't something you celebrated. But then you have all these Christian communities springing up, and people see the cross being elevated. It's like, what are you doing? You can't elevate the cross. And, what do people say? Well, haven't you heard? It's been conquered. That, in fact, the very worst thing that they could throw at us has been conquered. And now we hold it up in celebration because Caesar is no longer Lord. There's a new Lord. Beautiful. So having the cross at the top was my fiance. Man, God bless her. She's so amazing. I had a lot of debate about, should I put the eye at the top or should I put the cross at the top? I was really debating, right? Because the initial designs, the cross was at the bottom, and it looked aesthetically good. But eventually, I decided that the symbolism needed the cross at the top, and I'm so happy I went that route. Okay, so we had a look at the quote, and I spoke a little bit about the eyes. And then notice that there are two books next to the eye at the bottom. So that's also symbolic. It's also nicely symmetric. But on the left, you have the Old Testament, and on the right, you have the New Testament. So that's just the idea. So obviously, the Old Testament is a collection of different writings. The New Testament is a collection of writings. And so you have both. And in the center, you have the individual that looks up to the cross. And then there are, quite sneakily, 2 keys, one underneath the L and one underneath the E. And then also 2 little crowns. Now, the keys and the crowns don't have any... they have sort of obvious symbolism, right? Christ is king. So there's the crown. And also, there's an idea here that a key obviously unlocks things. I've always loved the symbolism of keys. I actually have a song called The Key, which you can find on my channel. And keys unlock things. So I do think that everything leading up to the cross, it's sort of the kingship of Christ, which unlocks the potential of an individual like nothing else can. And I asked the designer to give me a sort of... He said, describe what you want the design to look like. And I said, well, I want it to be kind of mystical, but I also want it to be kind of classically Western. I just love that aesthetic. Like, I love the little ribbons and the lines and the dots. I think it looks really cool. It also kind of looks like a craft beer brand. Like, if I ever open a craft beer company, I'm sorted with the logo, right? You can even the name, Existential, it would work perfectly. So, yeah. Okay, so let's have a look here. Okay, so I've got a few comments that came in. Shay Crook says, the new logo is amazing. Thank you so much. This logo is sick. Thank you so much. Hope your channel blows up. Thank you so much. I hope I'm saying your name right. Anawara. Thank you so much. Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of just producing content, and the channel has actually been growing, which is really cool. And I've been reaching out to a lot of other creators and seeing if they want to talk with me and have interviews. I have this like really weird background where I was into psychedelics, so I think that gives me a little bit of credence to talk to people. But yeah, there is a big growth of, or there's a new emergence of, I don't know, I don't want to say intellectual Christianity, but there's a lot of people that are talking about Christianity in a way that I think a lot of people are hungry to hear or thirsty to hear about. So thanks so much for the support, everyone that watched. And I appreciate your time. And I've just got one last thing to say before we wrap this up. This was kind of a test to see how the live streaming worked, and I'm just happy a few people even showed up. That's awesome. And also, it's now a video on my channel. And if someone's like, what does the symbolism of your logo mean? I can just say, well, there's a video I made. Go and check it out. And I'm going to make more of these live streams. So if you are here right now and you're hearing this, please consider giving this video a like. That does help a lot. And I just very quickly want to mention that I actually recently started an online store where I've taken elements of this design and I've turned them into merchandise, which I think looks really cool. I ordered some for myself. And this logo itself is also going to be put on t-shirts at some point. I've ordered one for myself, but I don't want to make that live yet because this design is pretty complex and I don't want to release a shirt for sale in the public and then this design doesn't print well. So I've printed one for myself. Once that arrives and I see that the design looks good, then I will release this design, this logo, publicly on a shirt. But for now, if you are interested and you want to support the channel and get yourself some really cool aesthetic merch at the same time, I'm having a sale right now on my website, on my online store. You can get 20% off anything you buy if you use the promo code DELIGHT, and it is merchandise for the metaphysically mannered. Now, the sale ends on the 6th of October since it is the launch sale. So if you're interested and you want some cool, epic gear, there's a lot of different items. There's like stickers and t-shirts and male and female clothing. There's eyes, there's crosses. If you're into that stuff, please go and check it out. Please consider supporting the channel. It does help. And yeah, you'll find a link to this store in my banner on my homepage on YouTube, but I'll also put a link in the description of this video once it goes live. And on that note, I'm going to end things here. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. I appreciate your time, and fellow human being on the opposite end of the screen. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. My name is Dylan Goos. This has been Existential Delight, and I'll